Today's topic is not the best topic to talk about, but don't let that ruin the mood. And see, I already have some weird glasses. As a weird person, you expect me to have some weird shit. Today is actually a sad day because with the broader topic of a broken South Africa, I just want to talk about something that I saw the other day. And yeah, as you know, like if you have my number, I posted that I was going to talk about the deteriorating education, the secondary and primary education in South Africa is not the best. But before I get to that, that will be a part two, but it will be in the same podcast. And I hope this is going to be a 30-minute podcast to chill and relax. Listen, this is important. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another podcast, another AlphaUncut show episode number 3, broader topic of why South Africans are broken. And today I just want to dive into one of the worst things that I've experienced or seen. And I'm going to start by telling you the story. So the other day I was driving around Riverside. If you don't know where Riverside is, it's close to Dynfun. Dynfun is a rich man suburb. And it's now becoming a suburb. Can't even get in without paying. Can't even go to. There's a mug and bean there, and can't even go in if you're not a resident. So yeah, it's a secluded. I may say it only takes inclusive. It only includes the people that can afford it. And as you know, there's an economic disparity. If you don't know about it, watch my first episode. You'll see that. Yeah, but I was just driving. I saw this school transport, I suppose, dropping off some kids from a school. I don't know what school this is, but they were dressed in some brown dress, some brown sweater. If anything, actually, the uniform was kind of ugly, but that's not even the main thing. Now, I saw these girls from high school. They got off this school transport, and a gentleman must have been about 30, 32, 33, started escorting one of them. And I've learned a little bit of Zulu, so I could hear the conversation. And guys, this guy was literally hitting on this child, and that just made me sad because these kids are impressionable. But then it got me thinking, what is it about this drunk man attracts them to these kids? And I looked keenly at the dress code, this child's dress code, and it's way above the knees, just shorter than her morals, I guess. But that's being a little bit judgmental on the kid. She's still a kid. This guy pulls out a phone, gets a number. And all the time I'm watching and I'm thinking, first of all, I don't like how this man, with his brain or lack of brain thereof, decided to walk and go get this child's number, whoever's number that is. Whoever's number that is. Because, in South Africa, these kids have phones in school. And then this kid, for whatever reason, is desensitized enough to basically give out this number. And so that got me into another can of worms, open another can of worms. I'm not happy to talk about this because I had to go and research what are some of the effects. There's these kids who are half naked, and then there's a correlation, and I say correlation, not causation, correlation with teenage pregnancies. Yeah, these kids get kids when still in school. And so I decided, instead of just jumping into how bad the education system already is, the primary and secondary one, because as you know, university, it's perfect. Why don't I explore the teenage pregnancies in South Africa? Teenage pregnancy is a growing concern in South Africa. 2022 and 2023 year alone, about 150,000 girls aged between 10 to 19, and the majority of them are 15 became pregnant. Take a moment and think about that. 15-year-olds, kids. What kind of brain did you have when you were 15? 15-year-olds are pregnant. Alarmingly, more than 2,700 of these children, 2,700 of these children were between 10 and 14. I don't know if the anger has started burning inside of you, and I hope I'm loud enough because we have to fix this country one person at a time. And this is my way of educating you guys and fixing this country. I'll admit, not native here, but I recognize the issues. Can you imagine child, girl of 10 years, pregnant? I didn't even know about high school when I was 10. I mean, okay, maybe I did. It was a long time ago, but 10, you're pregnant. I mean, 25-year-olds cannot fathom being, some 25-year-olds cannot fathom being pregnant or having, or making somebody pregnant, or getting somebody pregnant at 25. But a lady, not even a lady, this is a child, 10, 12, not even a teenager, is pregnant. And then there's 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds also pregnant. This is an age group where pregnancies are often linked to, sometimes statutory rape and abuse. And South Africa is the rape capital of the world. Again, on my last podcast, I talked about how some uncles give their nephews and nieces pornography. I happen to know a few children. Now they're adults, but when they were children, they got molested by their uncles. In them, it developed an nymphomaniac tendency. Could never get sexually satisfied. Could never bond with other people, with partners. Could never have a successful marriage because they were abused. And let me tell you something about teenage pregnancies. When a teenager has a child, this I'll talk about the story of this pastor that, as you know, bought an iPhone for this high school kid, and now the kid is pregnant. That kid is gonna suffer because she's a kid who was a kid. And for what? An iPhone? And this is a pastor, a full grown man. It was trending all over X. We didn't stop this man, and now this child is pregnant, has joined the statistics. I don't know, a moment of silence for these young girls because their life is literally over. There's no two ways about it. You get pregnant, you get pregnant at 13. And I mean, I finished high school, or I joined high school, I think, when I was 13 or turning 13. I was turning 18 when I was completing this thing. So around 17. And I didn't even know what responsibility was at 19, let alone 13. And here is a girl, child, who has carried a child, another one, to full term. It's sad. It's sad. And as I'm addressing this, I have to address those parents that let their children go out dressed like WHOREs. Listen, sooner or later, her morality is gonna be shorter than that dress. She's gonna have external influence. These drunk men who have impaired judgment, and I'm not excusing their behavior, they're effed up. They're effed up. But they don't care about your child. They're gonna shell at this kid. They're gonna offer sandwiches. They're gonna offer sausages, and this kid is gonna fall into a trap. And they don't know about protection. And this man, with a high spread of HIV and AIDS in this country, don't even care about the future of those children. So you parents, I don't know what kind of a father lets their child, daughter, or go out dressed in a school uniform that is lower, or I mean, like you can literally see bums. What kind of a father are you? And the mothers that think that this is a way of expressing them, the child expressing their individuality, you're fucking stupid. I'm sorry to say. You're fucking up these children. And I'm sorry for using the F word and with not even cutting it short. You know what? I'm not sorry. Those mothers are fucked up. These children need to be shown the way. And if you're the mother and you dress like a lady of the night, you don't have to let your kids go through the same cycle, same thing. Okay, the numbers have gone up, and I don't want to mention this notorious province, KwaZulu Natal. Don't want to mention you guys, but I will. Again, there's a church where older men are marrying kids young enough to be their daughters, and we could list out contributing factors like poverty, GBV, lack of comprehensive education, or limited access to contraceptives. But for example, limited access to contraceptives. In what world are you giving a 13-year-old contraceptives? Isn't that giving them permission to go do the unnecessary out there? It is not okay. And it affects the black child disproportionately compared to the other communities. So we're definitely doing something wrong. Okay? We're definitely doing something wrong. And let me tell you something. And if you come from a household that has no father, remember that this girl child has no form of authority or parental love that comes from a father, and they need that. They need a father figure. And they need somebody who's authoritative. And they do not need to confuse authority with a type of sexual preference. It is disturbing that the people that are entrusted with these kids, the teachers, also sleep with these kids. There is unfortunate. Again, I've known somebody who once proudly, when I was back in varsity, told me, when I was in high school, we used to have this. I used to dish out the salad in class, or when we go to events or museums, or we're going to a museum, so we have a school trip. We used to sit at the back. It's a co-ed for anybody who's not South African. The most South African schools are co-ed, boys and girls. There's a few good schools like Pretoria Girls, which is girls only, and I would advocate for that because that's basic. It basically keeps these two genders away. Look, when these kids are adolescents, you can't have them in the same setting without proper sex education. Back to this dress code that bothers me so much, and which I'm linking directly to these pregnancies. Now, you let your daughter go to school basically underdressed, basically with a sweater and no pants, and the boy child is also goes to school just turning 14. Usually boys are a bit older, so 14-year-old boy, maybe 13-year-old girl, or even further in the education system, maybe a 16-year-old and this 15-year-old, or you get the idea. Now this boy child is tasked with the requirement to study, and I wish I could share and just show you an image. uh, Let me see if I can just share my screen here and share what I've seen. Maybe some other time. Maybe some other time. Let me show you how this. You know what? I want to show you how these kids dress. I'll make a plan. Or maybe you can just go and Google South African high school students and see how they're dressed. Okay, go and see how they're dressed. It's sad that you expect so much for this from this boy child. You expect them to learn, and what they see left, right, and center is thighs. And to make it worse, this I know you've seen these videos on X. And when I say X, I mean X Twitter. Get your mind out of the gutter. Okay, this is not nothing matter. Let me do that Kanye West thing. Look, you've seen these teachers who wear very tight clothing, and they're usually curvy. And in school, and they're teaching math. Which adolescent is going to understand what you're teaching when you're dressed like a. Okay, you've also seen these videos of teachers dancing, and they're dancing maybe to Sister Bettina, but they're doing provocative dances on a school. Maybe it's even some principals. The principals that have no principles. It's not laughing matter. Now, let me just talk about these contributing factors and expound on them. Poverty, for example. So many of the young girls that come from poverty-stricken homes, I mean, one, they'll encounter very uncouth characters in their uncles to begin with and in their neighbors. And there's a high likelihood if you come from like informal settlement, there's a rapist roaming around. Usually, some degenerate is out there. Get pregnant from a rapist. You don't even want to keep the child, but you are a victim of the teenage pregnancy. Then there's gender-based violence, which contributes significantly to the teenage pregnancy, and they work the same as that poverty line. Then there's lack of comprehensive sex education in some countries, and I'll refer to Kenya. Sex education is taught from when you're in grade 6. Sexual organs and menstruation and hormones that are associated and what you shouldn't do. Even teach you how to use a condom. Maybe it's a little bit too early, but you learn that these things You need to avoid them because they could literally ruin your life. Then we have limited access to contraceptives, and this is a touchy one because you're not going to give a 10-year-old contraceptives. An 18-year-old, sure, maybe teach them that's supposed to be, what that's supposed to do. 20-year-old, sure, but a 14-year-old, really? And the people that are sleeping with these 14-year-olds, what the fuck is wrong with you? Where's your brain? You have no brain. You have shit for brains. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that. I'm really sad. I hope I'm slow enough that you can understand me. This is actually dangerous to the society because a pregnant teenager is gonna have a child who's gonna grow up to probably be a pregnant teenager. Okay. Then we have family dynamics and peer pressure. Look, just because your neighbors, your classmates are doing it if the teacher has skipped class, doesn't mean you should do it. And the children and the high schoolers are probably one day are going to watch this. You can wait. You can literally wait. The system has failed you. Your parents have failed you. Your father has failed you. And if you have no father and you're part of the populace that is in fatherless homes, which is about 40% with no biological father, and even more without actual, like almost 70%, I would think. Yeah, you should change the cycle. It's difficult to be the change, but take that step. Learn. What kind of impact does teenage pregnancy have on the society? Actually, just general impact. And on what can we do? What can we really do? See, I don't know how to advise people that are 30-year-olds, people that are 25, people that pass outside of our high school and think that have seen a potential wife. I don't know how to advise you because all I think is that you're stupid. And it's fine, it's fine. You don't have to like this podcast. It's not meant for perverts. You need to be reasonable. You need to let these children grow. You need to show them the way. And if you didn't get an education, you need to push them so that they can get an education because you know how tough it is out here without an education. I mean, what are you going to do without an education in this country? Okay. The consequences are actually very devastating. First, we'll have a dropout. If you get pregnant while in high school, you might drop out. I mean, 9 months, a baby is kicking in your womb at the fifth month. You're living because of the stigma. Everybody's looking at you as the stigma that is associated with sex when you're not supposed to be having it. And the dropout, the dropout rates increase year on year. Like they're not getting better. And in a country with so many perverts, I would think, I'm sorry to say this, because we have a high rape culture in South Africa. We have a rape culture. We have a high incidence of rape. And those are the ones that are reported. So many of them are not reported. The girl child is actually has faced a crisis for a long time. And yeah, we'll get to where the boy child is involved and the crisis that is the boy child, maybe even another podcast. But boys don't get pregnant. They don't pay the biological cost of pregnancy. Well, females do, and this boys they will choose not to be parents. You can't tell a 14, 16-year-old boy you have to be a father now. This they can easily run away. So we can have this sex education, and we can spread it far and wide, and we can do. And this is my way of teaching. This I'm doing my part. We can have more of this podcast, more of these conversations that are uncomfortable. We can have improved access to contraceptives, and I've seen in varsity, I mean, free condoms. Now, the point where we extend this to high schools, and it's so difficult to talk about this because how you a high schooler getting sex and now you're pregnant, and how do we introduce condoms to you? But we have to now because clearly 150,000 children got pregnant over a course of 1 year. We need to strengthen the family support system, and this is the reason why father figures are so important. And I already see this podcast has gone all the way to the 25th minute. But we need to address that part because the girls that grow up without fathers, they are more likely to get pregnant, to be pregnant when they're teenagers. But we need to have community engagement forums. We also need to take some legal action against the perpetrators that rape these girls and get them pregnant. And even if the girl doesn't get pregnant, shame on you for feeling the need to go out there and satisfy your stupid urges on children. I don't know. I've heard Chicky Tiger. It's a place where there's ladies of the night, and they go for 20 rand apparently. Why don't you just go there, get one? It's the same price as a beer. Literally, satisfy your urges with those ones. They're selling it. It's right there. You don't have to go after these kids. We need to take legal action against those. We need to take legal action against the ones who have committed statutory rape, where they pretend that the girls agreed. We even need to raise the age of consent. It's currently 16. How can the age of consent be 16? And maybe raising it will not have. You can't have like people cannot be drinking at 18, but they're having sex at 16. It doesn't make sense to me. And I know in different countries it differs, and some as low as 14, and those ones are weird. South Africa has it at 16. 16 or 17. This really needs to change. It needs to be at least 18 when you're able to drink. Because at 18, most people have finished high school. It needs to be illegal on both fronts. By the way, the child needs to get a juvenile record. I know it's harsh, but we need to tell them there'll be consequences if they're found, and then this can be expunged when they're 18, so it doesn't affect them in adulthood. But as juveniles, they need to be held accountable. Maybe will enforce this in them. It's a tough way, but if everything fails, we need to do that. So both sides, the one committed statutory rape needs to go to prison, maybe for 25 years minimum, and the juvenile needs to be transferred into like a juvenile system where they can be assisted to complete high school. That will probably prevent dropouts, probably prevent teenage pregnancies. Maybe South Africa needs to consider doing away with co-educational schools. Stop mixing these boys and girls when they are in high school. If they're getting each other pregnant, maybe it's time to consider that. Maybe it's time to consider making all schools boarding schools and facilitating that to the government, making sure the government subsidizes education for these children. So that whether you're marginalized or not, and these are just solutions I'm thinking about on the spot, because there's countries where people are in boarding schools and they don't have to do all of this. They don't have as high teenage pregnancies as here in South Africa. Okay, so one, we gotta change this dress code. Two, we're gonna make it difficult for these kids to be exchanging salads and sausages. Three, we need to hold everybody accountable. These old men, stupid old men that do this to these kids, we need to hold them accountable. We need to update the laws. They need to go in. They need to be jailed. Okay, that's just one. Go out there, Google how South African students dress, and you'll see why it makes me so angry. Even part two. Now, I want to talk about the worsening state of education in South Africa. Look, for you to pass matric, you don't even need to get to know half the knowledge that has been taught to you. I mean, scratch that. You don't even need to know the 4 years of knowledge of when you were in high school. You need to get only 30%. And I don't know. For anybody who's shocked, I don't know. I don't know if you're shocked. You were shocked as I was shocked, and I found out that this year. How can you be allowed to pass when you didn't even understand half the knowledge that was taught to you, that was presented to you? It's worsening also, which means they might even reduce it to 25%. So you literally would have to get a quarter. This is not even funny, because it means that when these children transition into education systems that are a bit tougher or just normal, where you require 50% to pass, they find it incredibly difficult. And maybe they will drop out of university because I got 30% and didn't pass. What do you mean? I mean, why did they let me into varsity if I would require more in varsity than in primary school? Why wouldn't they make the system in high school compatible with a good education system in university? So I've seen this being a little bit of a controversial aspect, and I had a chance to discuss this with one of somebody I met at the airport, and I said, how can we have a society of people that we consider educated? And how can matric count towards anything if the people literally don't even need to have the knowledge? And I don't know about you, but really, really, less than 30%, I would think you probably not even in class. Those are the children that are having sex in the back of the room. So a low pass mark such as 30%, and I don't know if it applies to all subjects, but physics, 30% pass. Math, 30% pass. And I think even the literary test, something people can do because the other math is difficult, 30% probably. The problem with the low pass mark has been widely criticized, because it sets low standards. People do not look at academic achievement the same way when they cross over to university. Students can pass with as little study in their language of learning and Afrikaans. And I'm just saying Afrikaans because it's one of the languages of learning. Or Zulu is Xhosa or whatever and whatever. And this is actually very easy to learn, but it's a disservice to them because in the long run, it doesn't build them. So those students will struggle with tertiary education or even the workforce because now they have to deliver on more knowledge, more than 30% of the knowledge. So the numbers they speak for themselves. In 2024, only 51% of learners who started grade 1 in 2013 managed to pass matric. Granted, it's more than 50%, but the people that are left behind are about 590,000 young South Africans. They're not going anywhere. They have to redo or retake or do something. And can you imagine when I started this podcast, I wanted to talk about how much of a bitch Elon Musk is, but now I'm out here discussing how you cannot really tell these children that 30% is okay and expect them to be functional people in the workforce. You know, how do you empower the 590,000 people? Do you take them to vocational training? Do you take them to vocational? What is 30% as a pass mark really? And I'm not gonna dwell so much on this. The last lady, Angie Mot, the lady now heading defense, she said soldiers need 4 days to train, 4 days to I think to work out, and then 2 days to rest. If you count that, it's 10 days. And she meant this in a week. And she was the Minister of Education or Minister for Education. Now, if you have people like that heading crucial, and education it's a very crucial ministry. If you have people that think like that, and I'm not saying she's totally daft, but I think for the most part, she also struggles with numbers like Zuma. And sorry, I'm not attacking Zuma, but in the beginning, guy. Okay, again, this is not funny. Low pass marks perpetuate low expectations and poor outcomes. And that is why children, those when they become adults, they'll struggle to function in the society or even in employment because you're used to low standards. Now, when you ask them for a bit higher standards, it's torture, becomes torture. And I'm going to quickly just look at what kind of solutions can be employed you know, uh, in this case. We need educational reforms. I'll tell you that we need some sort of educational reform. We need to be bold about this. We need to speak up as the other South Africans need to speak up. They need to call this Minister of Education and say, look, you cannot lower the standards so that more people can pass. If anything, you need to raise the standards. You need to cultivate a culture of people aiming for higher standards. That way, you get a different kind of populace on the other end. It's a sieve. And repeating matric it's not an issue. Do it until you get the knowledge in. The point is not to pass; it's to get information into your brain. For you to understand. Like you say, people will say, with matric you can get employed in South Africa. Yeah, you can. But what can you be employed as? A retailer, you know? And unless you're privileged enough to get into a company and grow from bottom all the way up, you are literally doomed. Not only that, you cannot even go into another country and be successful. You're stuck in one country, and if you had one job, and in one company, and probably for the rest of your life. Okay? So we also need to bring in the experts and ask them, how can we or how can they structure the system in such a way that it progressively becomes better? So today the pass mark is 30%, maybe raise it to 35%, then 40%. At least, guys, let's get to 50%. 50% is a universal average of saying, you got some good amount of the knowledge. Half of it you have. The other half you can learn along the way. But 30%, it means this person does not know almost everything. I mean, they almost don't have any knowledge in their brains. It's disappointing. So we need better teacher training programs. We need improved school resources. We need policies that enforce and create this kind of structure, this opportunity for children to actually aim for higher standards. You need support. You need supportive environments for learners, and you need to integrate what they study in school and what happens in life, so life skills, and develop a curricula that is actually continuously improving. You can't have the same curricula for the rest, for eternity. It needs to change. You need to change from one old system into a new one as technology progresses, as the world changes, as information becomes more accessible. You need to change your education curricula to match the requirements of today's world. Don't churn out matric scholars that have no idea what is going on in the world. That when I came to South Africa the first time, when I told this person that I was from Kenya, and they really struggled to understand where it was. Was it in West Africa? Because they had never learned anything about outside the country. Maybe apart from Lesotho and Swaziland, but as you know, that's just South Africa with extra steps. People thought Kenya was in West Africa, and they would associate every foreigner with Nigerians. They were spot on where Nigeria is because Nigeria has a reputation. But as for the other countries, or even talk about when we would have conversation, talk about, or let me tell you a little bit about American history. They wouldn't actually know about American history, and maybe it's not important. But there was an intersection between that history, the history of Africa, Asian history. There was an intersection. Like it was knowledge that once you knew, you would understand. You understood at least even geopolitics. You understood, for example, how China, let me just call Asia, let me just say Asia, but mostly China, and how US benefited from morphine being smuggled into the US, things like that. Information that was denied because if it was presented and you didn't want it, that was a different case, but it was literally not presented. You were denied the opportunity to learn. So I want to end this with a small, or just a small part, just describing how there's an intersection between the teenage pregnancies and the worsening education. So let's connect these dots. Teenage pregnancies directly impact educational outcomes. Many young mothers are forced to drop out of school due to stigma or lack of support. On the flip side, poor educational systems fail to equip learners with knowledge about reproductive health or life skills that could prevent teenage pregnancies. Intersection right over there. Okay. So it's clear that improving education system isn't just going to help people go get into a proper workforce. It's also going to lower the cases of teenage pregnancies. You know, maybe even in turn lower the cases of fatherlessness. You know, develop a black community, and I'm sorry if I'm leaving any other community out, but the black community is very negatively impacted with this. The family unit is almost non-existent. Who would want a South Africa that has a future where you see um, the family structure, complete? So think about it. We have so many ways we can improve the education system. We have so many ways we can teach these kids, and these fathers need to tell the children they cannot dress like ladies of the night and not expect to be looked at as ladies of the night by this crazy men. And again, I'm not blaming these children because these children are doing what has been done. I'm blaming the parents. I'm blaming the teachers. I'm blaming the South African government and the society that has basically pushed these kids into being the kind of kids that they are. So this is another segment, or has been another segment, in the broader topic of why South Africa is broken and what we can do about it. So I've offered some solutions. I've offered some statistics. But I've given you a story or two. It's a sad one. It's a really sad one. The solutions. Teenage pregnancies and declining education standards are two sides of the same coin. It's a reflection of systemic inequality that demands urgent action now. So, as an individual, do your part. As a society, we must advocate for reforms that empower our youth through education while addressing socioeconomic challenges like parenthood. This has been Alpha Uncut. It's raw, so I do not do a lot of editing. Again, if there was music, it would be somber because this is such a sad topic. And it's better than discussing Elon Musk. It's not going to improve our lives. In fact, is literally making your lives worse. Starlink or no Starlink. So, again, my thoughts right from here into your brains. Think about it. Next time you see a child, a high school student, dressed in a miniskirt, fishnet stockings, look at them and see that their parents have failed them. Look at that. Now, I'm not making an income out of this podcast. So I'm not afraid of being demonetized or anything like that. So I'll give it to you straight. This country is full of perverts and they don't distinguish between children and adults. If you let your children dress like prostitutes, those men who are not objective men, they're not responsible men, are going to look at those kids like an easy meal, an easy salad. And those kids are easily impressionable. And sooner or later, they'll get pregnant. And you, as a parent, will find yourself raising another child. Well, your child is still a child. So your child has a child, and you're the mother or the father taking care of your child's child and your child. So I've seen a lot of comments when I was doing this research, and a lot of people do not care that these kids are dressed like that. They even enjoy it, maybe. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. We have to change society. We have to improve. We have to improve how we look at these things. And just because it was okay in 1975 doesn't mean it's okay today. These children are ending up on websites. I've seen videos that are despicable. On the news the other day, there's a child pornography ring that was running. That's despicable. We can do better. We can do better. Thank you so much if you've watched the whole of my podcast. And comment on what you think should be done to improve these children's lives, to prevent teenage pregnancies, improve the education system, and maybe how we should go about selecting the Minister of Education. And now, I've had two podcasts in the past. This is a bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks I'll have a podcast. And YouTube thinks you might like this one next. So take a look, maybe like, and maybe comment. And if you like it too much, you could share. Do your part in educating the masses.